Hello everyone, you're watching Natural Television from Ankara in Turkey. Welcome to our news program. My name is Sauda Muganga. I'll bring to you our news headlines. Starting our news with the interview, the UN Human Rights President was in Geneva. The United Nations Human Rights Council President Koli speaks in an interview the day before the 40th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council on Sunday in Geneva, Switzerland.
We are ready to talk about this issue, having in mind that human rights are indivisible, political, civil, and economic, social rights. So we have a lot of important issues on the agenda. We're listening to the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the General Assembly, the President of the...
Heading our news to Africa with the presidential elections in Senegal. People cast their ballots in the presidential elections yesterday at a polling station in Dakar, Senegal. Over 6 million citizens are eligible to cast vote in the country's 11th presidential elections. 5 candidates, including the Biden president, Macky Sall, are striving for the presidency with different manifestos. In Ankara yesterday, Mustafa Şentop was elected Turkey's new parliament speaker. Turkey's newly elected parliament speaker, Mustafa Şentop, attends the official handover ceremony with the interim president speaker, Celal Adan, in Ankara yesterday. The Turkish parliament on Sunday elected ruling Justice and Development AKP party's lawmaker Mustafa Şentop as its new speaker. Şentop, a lawmaker from northwestern Tekirdağ province, received 336 votes in the third round of voting by Grand National Assembly of 600 seats. Olivia Colman at the Oscar Awards. Olivia Colman accepted her award for the Best Actress at the Oscar Awards in style, calling the win hilarious. She played Queen Anna in The Favourite, winning the only award for the film at the 91st Academy Awards. She said, "I have to thank lots of people, and if I forget anybody, I'll find you later and give you a massive snob." During an emotional speech, Colman became the 11th British actress to take home the prize. The last time a Brit won a distinction was in 2009 when Kate Winslet won for the portrait of Hannah Shimsi in The Reader. Colman's win, which took her and the whole of social media by surprise, sparked some great reaction online. Trump says North Korea could be great power without nuclear weapons. North Korea could become one of the world's great economic powers if it abdicates its nuclear weapons, US President Donald Trump said. Writing on Twitter, Mr. Trump said North Korea had more potential for rapid growth than any other country. His comments came hours after his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Pyongyang remains a nuclear threat. Mr. Trump will meet North Korea leader Kim Jong-un for the second time on the 27th and 28th of February in Hanoi, Vietnam. Venezuela's crisis continues. Defectors fear for families under Maduro. Venezuelan soldiers who deserted into Colombia on Saturday say they fear for the safety of their families under President Nicolas Maduro's government. One of the people who deserted, aged 23, says he is worried. Forces local to the president may lash out against my family, he said, but I think it was the best decision I could have ever made. More than 100 soldiers are said to have deserted, most during deadly clashes over aid deliverance on Saturday. Tensions were high after President Maduro sent troops to block roads and bridges at the borders of neighboring countries Brazil and Colombia, where food and medicine deliveries organized by the US were set to enter the country. Taliban co-founder Mullah Baradar heads for US talks in Qatar. One of the Taliban's founders is going to Qatar for today's talks with the US, raising chances of a peace deal. Mullah Abdur spent 8 years in Pakistan custody until his release last year. He is now in charge of the Taliban political office in Qatar, but until now he has remained in Pakistan. Last month, US Taliban talks in Qatar made progress in ending 17 years of conflict in Afghanistan. The US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad did not give details but said the unprecedented 6 days of talks were more productive than they had been in the past years. The Taliban also said progress has been made in the negotiations. However, a spokesman said that the talks about unsolved matters would continue. Heading to South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa names special tribunal to recover corruption proceeds. A special tribunal is to be set up in South Africa with powers to fast-track prosecutions and recover the precedents of corruption. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the tribunal would consider cases brought by the Special Investigation Unit. After 25 years in power, the African National Congress has become tainted by widespread allegations of corruption, which forced out Mr. Ramaphosa's predecessor, Jacob Zuma, last year. South Africa faces elections on 8th May, and Mr. Ramaphosa's announcement of the 8th-member panel comes a day after the largest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, said it would place the fight against corruption at the heart of its election campaign. I take our headlines to Rome. Pope Francis compares child abuse to human sacrifice. Pope Francis said had promised concrete action to tackle child sex abuse at the end of the Roman Catholic Church Summit on Pardauphin. The Pope said clergy guilty of abuse were tools of Satan, pledging to face everyday case with utmost seriousness. Child sex abuse, he said, reminded him of the ancient religious practice of child sacrifice in pagan rites. Bishops would now review and strengthen their guidelines to prevent abuse and punish perpetrators, he added. Pope admits cleric abuse of nuns, including sexual slavery and child sex abuse. He also condemns child sex abuse and church cover-ups. The Pope spoke largely in general terms, but victims and survivors of abuse will call for detailed practice steps to be announced. About our news in technology, GCHQ, the Chinese tech threats must be understood. The UK's cybersecurity agency is warning that British must understand the potential opportunities and threats of using Chinese technology. GCHQ Director Jeremy Fleming will give a rare speech on Monday emphasizing the need for better cybersecurity practices in the telecoms industry. The US is pursuing its allies to not use Chinese from Huawei technology to farm new 5 GB networks. Its officials are concerned that China could be using Huawei products to spy on other countries. Most of the UK's mobile companies, Vodafone, EE, and the Three, have been working with Huawei on 5G, but they are awaiting the results of a government review due in March or April that will decide whether or not they will be allowed to go ahead. The Africa's largest film festival turns 50 in FESPACO. Some 100,000 people are expected to attend 450 screenings over the next week at the FESPACO Film Festival in Burkina Faso. Security is tight following a wave of attacks by Islamic militants in the country. Since FESPACO began 50 years ago, now women has ever won the top prize, the Golden Stallion of Yenega. One of the favorites this year is Rafiki by Kenyan Wanuri, about a lesbian affair. It was temporarily banned in her home country but was shown at the Cannes Film Festival in France. More than 2,000 security personnel have been deployed to guarantee the safety of guests and cinema goers. About 80 people have been killed in the past 3 months in the attacks of Islamic militants, which have also forced schools to close in several regions. Heading to Senegal elections, President Macky Sall heading for victory. Senegalese President Macky Sall is headed towards a second term in office. His Prime Minister has alleged. Mohamed Dionne said preliminary results suggested Mr. Sall had secured about 57% of the vote in Sunday's election, but an official result will take days to happen. The rival candidates warned against declaring the results prematurely. Mr. Salih faced 4 challengers in the vote, but was accused of preventing his main rivals from running for corruption convictions. 2 well-known opposition figures were barred from taking part after being deemed ineligible because of as a result of the decision. Neither the Socialist Party nor the Senegalese Democratic Party, which have dominated the country's political landscape since independence, are fielding presidential candidates. The Turkish Defense Minister, Hulusi Akar, was welcomed by acting U.S. Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan upon Akar's arrival at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. last Friday. The Palestinians struggle with Jewish settlers for their rightful territory. Various shots from shops and streets of Hebrew on Saturday. Jewish settlers attacked Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank city of Al-Kahir, also known as Hebron. The Israelis include physical violence, throwing stones, writing racist slogans on the walls of houses, damaging vehicles and property, and running farmlands. There are around 250 illegal Jewish settlements in the West Bank, which Israel occupied after the 1967 Arab-Israel War. Over 600,000 Israelis are living there now. According to international law, all Jewish settlements are illegal in the occupied territories, while the resident Abdullah al-Mustaf speaks at the press regarding the attacks. President Erdogan breaks ground for Tersane in Istanbul. Turkish president on Saturday broke ground for a giant project that will feature science and culture centers, hotels, museums, as well as marinas at Istanbul's historical Haliç Golden Horn shipyard. The project, titled Tersane Istanbul, will positively contribute to Turkey's tourism revenues, Recep Tayyip Erdogan told the audience at the shipyard on Istanbul's European side. After the completion of the project, Erdogan said it will be the largest science center in Europe. The Turkish president also said around 30 million people are expected to visit the Tersane Istanbul when it is opened, and added that the first phase of the project is expected to be opened in November 2020. We continue our news to Nigeria. Presidential elections happened while voters queue at a polling station in Abuja last Saturday. As they prepare to vote in the presidential election, multiple explosions were heard in Nigeria's northeastern Borno state only hours before the general polls were due to open. Locals say that the explosions occurred at around 6 a.m. local time, and at least 11 people were killed in a suicide attack on a mosque in the capital of Borno State. Meanwhile, the police source in Jobo State said there was an attack in Jardim town in the early hours of the day. Neither the police nor the army has commented on the development. With the process dogged by fears of insecurity and violence, some 72.8 million voters will participate in the presidential and parliamentary ballot. The favorites are the ruling All Progressive Congress, incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari, and his main challenger Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party. Funerals for Palestinians in Gaza City. The Palestinians attend a funeral of a 15-year-old Yusuf Al-Daya, killed the previous day by Israel Army gunfire during a Great March of Return protesters along Gaza border in Gaza City last Saturday. Khojaly massacres victims remembered in Brussels. Hundreds of people take part in the protest rally in front of European Parliament in Brussels on Saturday. On the occasion of the 27th anniversary of Khojaly massacre, which happened in February 1992, when hundreds of Azerbaijani citizens, including women and children, were massacred and wounded by Armenian troops. The Khojaly massacre is regarded as one of the bloodiest and most controversial incidents of the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan for control of non-occupied Upper Karabakh region. On the heels of the Soviet Union's dissolution, Armenian forces took over the town of Kojali in Karabakh on February 26, 1992, after battling it with heavy artillery and tanks assisted by infantry regiment. Heading to Venezuela again, where they closed borders with Colombia. Venezuelan opposition supporters clashed with the Bolivian National Guard and the Colombian side of the Simon Bolivar International Bridge in north of Santander, Colombia on Saturday, while trying to take tracks of Venezuela with humanitarian aid. On the same note, Venezuela cuts diplomatic and political ties with Colombia. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro holds a rally in capital Caracas on last Saturday. Moves comes after Colombia assists self-proclaimed interim president to bring humanitarian aid into the country. Speaking in capital Caracas, Nicolas Maduro said he could no longer tolerate Colombian territory being used for attacks against Venezuela. He also added that, for that reason, I have decided to break all political and diplomatic relations with Colombia's fascist government. Maduro said Colombian diplomatic staff had 24 hours to leave the country after Colombia assisted self-proclaimed interim President Guaidó to bring humanitarian aid into the country. Continuing our headlines in Turkey, European Union in Turkey delegation head Christian Burger was in Antalya. The European Union ambassador to Turkey, Christian Burger, speaks in an interview on the sidelines of the Turkish Photojournalists Association's meeting in Turkey's southern Antalya province on Saturday. Iranian Horses Festival in Tehran. Various shots from the Iranian Horses Festival in capital Tehran, festival's organizer Ali and the Iranian Horse Riding Federation Committee head Sula Yusufniha speak to the press on Saturday. From Turkey, a Syrian couple hold on to life with calligraphy. A Syrian couple who migrated to Turkey and settled in Gaziantep due to the civil war in their country are trying to make a living from calligraphy. Muhyiddin Najib, a 70-year-old Syrian from Aleppo, started calligraphy when he was 13 years old. He settled in Gaziantep with his 60-year-old wife Hasna Tahan and his children after the civil war erupted in his country. Najib, who also teaches his wife the arts of calligraphy and marbling in a single-room house, is trying to forget the bitter memories of the war together with his wife. He had been giving calligraphy and marbling lessons for about 50 years in his homeland, and now he gives free lessons to Turkish and Syrian students in Gaziantep. The first international Eurasia Book Exhibition opens in Istanbul. The first edition of International Eurasia Book Festival kicks off last Saturday in Istanbul, bringing together many national and foreign publishing houses. The festival is supported by Turkish Culture and Tourism Ministry, Ministry of National Education, Turkish broadcaster TRT, and the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce. Speaking at the fair, Emrak Kisakule, chairman of an international-based press association in Istanbul, said over 200 foreign publishing houses from 70 countries will participate in the event. Kisakule noted that the fair will be consisted of poetry recitation, autography sessions, and conferences. The 9-day fair will host more than 100 writers. Also, Ridvan Duran, head of the Technical Affairs Department of Istanbul Municipality, said each book is a product of knowledge and experience. The fair, being held under the theme A Long Story, will end on March 3rd. There was a car-free day in Jakarta. People enjoy a car-free day held every Sunday morning in Jakarta, Indonesia. Interviews with Park Alif, the chairman of Jakarta Environmental Agency, and Jakarta residents Jafar Tasbit Raban on Sunday. The Turkish forces nabbed 3 PKK terrorists. Turkish military police escorts PKK terrorists from where arrested in Izmir, Çanakkale, and Istanbul on Sunday in Diyarbakır. In a statement, Diyarbakir governorship in eastern Turkey said anti-terror teams of military police arrested 3 suspects who reportedly joined the PKK terror group in 2015. Adding that the suspects, which were reportedly plotting attack in metropolitan cities, 2 of them were demanded in custody, while the 3rd one was released under judicial control. In its more than 30 years terror campaign against Turkey, the PKK, recognized as a terrorist group by Turkey, the US and the EU, has been responsible for the deaths of 400,000 people, including women and children. Palestinians' access to Dead Sea being blocked by Israel. Various shots from the coast of the Dead Sea in the occupied West Bank city of Jericho yesterday, Palestinian Suleiman Abu Surari and Palestinian Liberator Front Execution Committee Secretary Said Urekat speak to the press on Thursday. Palestinians' access to the Dead Sea is being blocked by wire fences set up by Israel between West Bank and the Dead Sea coasts. Thank you so much for watching our news program. You can check our programs on YouTube channel for Natural Television or send us messages on WhatsApp number written on your screen. You're watching Natural Television News from Ankara in Turkey. My name is Sauda Muganga. See you soon.